The bright control room of the USI flagship Horizon hummed with tension. Captain William Carter stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes fixed on the view screen. The vast darkness of space stretched before them, Jupiter's swirling, mass visible in the distance. They had traveled farther than any diplomatic mission in human history. "Approaching the meeting coordinates, Captain," Lieutenant Olivia Martinez announced from her tactical station. Her fingers moved quickly across the controls, running final system checks. Captain Carter nodded. At 45, with streaks of gray, in his dark hair he had seen humanity's first steps to Mars and the Europa colonies. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. First contact with an alien civilization. "Any sign of them?" he asked, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. Communications specialist Grace Peterson shook her head, her blonde hair shifting slightly with the movement. "No transmissions yet, sir, but we're right on schedule." Dr. Alan Wright paced nervously behind them. As the ship's xenobiologist, he had spent his career studying theoretical alien life. Now he would see the real thing. "They said they'd be here," he muttered. "The Valdorian Collective. Even the name sounds ancient." The transmission had arrived 3 weeks ago, clear and deliberate, directly to Earth's United Space Initiative, headquarters, an invitation, a greeting from the stars that humanity had dreamed of for centuries. "Contact," Grace called suddenly, her body tensing. "I'm detecting a vessel approaching from behind Saturn's rings. It wasn't there a moment ago. On screen," Carter ordered. The view screen shifted and collective gasps filled the bridge. The alien ship moved with impossible grace. Smaller than the horizon, it resembled a silver teardrop with strange flowing patterns across its hull that seemed to shift and change as they watched. "It's beautiful," Dr. Wright whispered. "And likely far more advanced than anything we have," Martinez added, her hand instinctively moving closer to the weapons controls. "No visible propulsion system, no radiation signature." Carter straightened, his blue uniform jacket. "Open a channel, Specialist Peterson. Channel open, sir. This is Captain William Carter of the United Space Initiative vessel Horizon, representing Earth and her colonies. We come in peace and friendship." For several long seconds, there was no response. Then the view screen changed again. The bridge, crew fell silent. The being on screen was tall and slender, with silvery skin that seemed to shimmer with subtle patterns of light. Its face was almost human-like in structure, but with larger almond-shaped eyes of deep purple. When it moved, it did so with fluid, precise motions. "Captain Carter," the alien spoke, its voice melodious and clear. "I am Emissary Valen of the Valdorian Collective. We welcome this historic meeting between our peoples." Carter nodded respectfully. "The people of Earth are honored by this contact. Emissary Valen, we have much to learn from each other." The alien's skin flickered with patterns of blue light. "Indeed. Our records show your civilization has advanced remarkably quickly, from primitive technology to space travel in mere centuries. Most impressive." Dr. Wright stepped forward eagerly. "Your records? You've been observing us?" A slight pause. "We observe many developing worlds, Doctor. It is our way to watch, to learn before making contact." The alien's head tilted slightly. "Would you not do the same?" Carter gestured to Dr. Wright. "May I introduce Dr. Alan Wright, our xenobiologist, along with Lieutenant Olivia Martinez and Communications Specialist Grace Peterson." The alien nodded to each. "We propose a cultural and technological exchange. Nothing significant at first. Small steps between new friends." For the next 3 hours, the meeting continued. The Valdorians shared limited information about their civilization, a collection of worlds spanning several star systems, with a history stretching back thousands of years. They expressed particular interest in Earth's diverse ecosystems and human adaptability. When the meeting concluded, Carter invited the emissary to visit Earth directly. "Soon," Valen promised. "But first we must prepare our people for such an encounter. Not all new species prove to be compatible with galactic community." Back in his private quarters, Carter reviewed the meeting recordings with Dr. Wright. "They're holding back," Carter said, rubbing his tired eyes. Wright nodded, his excitement from earlier now tempered with professional caution. "Did you notice how they avoided questions about their biology? And that comment about compatibility concerns me. Something else," Martinez added as she entered the room with data tablets. "When they thought the transmission was on standby, I caught this." She played a brief recording showing the emissary's skin flashing with rapid patterns while speaking. To someone off-screen. "I've analyzed those light patterns," Grace said, joining them. "They form a secondary communication system. Without translating the actual content, the patterns they displayed when talking about humans were similar to patterns predatory animals show when stalking prey." Carter frowned deeply. "You're saying they see us as prey?" "I'm saying they're biological. Responses suggest predatory instincts," Wright clarified. "Whether that translates to their cultural intentions, I can't say." The ship shuddered suddenly, alarms blaring throughout the vessel. "Captain, to the bridge," came an urgent call over the intercom. They rushed to the control room where the navigator looked up with panic in his eyes. "Massive energy surge from Earth direction, sir. Communications with home are down." "On screen," Carter ordered. The view screen flickered to life, showing a distant view of Earth. 3 massive ships, dwarfing the diplomatic vessel they'd met earlier, hung in orbit around the blue planet. Even from this distance, they could see smaller craft descending to the surface. "It was a distraction," Martinez whispered. "They wanted us away from Earth." Peterson worked frantically at her station. "I'm picking up emergency transmissions. Seattle, Cairo, Mumbai, Sydney, all reporting attacks." Carter's face hardened as he watched his homeworld under assault. "Set course for Earth, maximum speed. Alert the Mars and Europa colonies. This isn't a diplomatic mission anymore." Dr. Wright stood frozen, watching the screen. "They lied about everything. The meeting, their intentions." "No," Carter said grimly. "They told us one truth. They've been watching us for a long time. Studying us. Like farmers inspecting livestock before slaughter," Martinez added quietly. Carter shook his head. "They made a critical error. Whatever these Valdorians are, whatever worlds they've conquered before, they don't understand what they're dealing with now." As the horizon raced toward Earth, they received scattered reports from the ground. Despite the surprise attack and superior technology, human forces were fighting back fiercely. The Valdorians had expected easy conquest but were meeting determined resistance. "Earth has faced countless threats throughout its history," Carter told his crew as they prepared for battle. "Natural disasters, wars, climate crisis. Each challenge forced us to adapt, to become stronger. We survived not by being meek, but by being fierce when threatened." Wright looked up from his station, understanding dawning on his face. "They think we're prey animals they've been cultivating." Carter nodded. "But Earth doesn't create prey." He turned to face the view screen, where the distant battle for humanity's homeworld raged. "It nurtures predators." Sergeant Frank Miller crouched behind the burned-out shell of a city bus. The streets of Chicago lay in ruins around him. 3 months had passed since the Valdorians arrived. 3 months of fighting, hiding, and watching his city fall piece by piece. "Any movement?" he asked, his voice low and rough from smoke and lack of sleep. Samantha Collins lowered her binoculars and shook her head. The young medic had dark circles under her eyes. Before the invasion, she had been finishing medical school. Now she patched up wounded fighters with whatever supplies they could scavenge. "Nothing yet," she whispered. "But their patrol patterns suggest they'll come through this sector soon." Kevin Daniels worked quietly nearby, fingers moving across a tablet device connected to a small box of wires. The former tech store employee had become their communications and technology expert by necessity. "Got it," Kevin said suddenly. "Tapped into their local network. They're not just patrolling. They're searching for something specific in this area." Frank peered over the edge of the bus. The downtown Chicago skyline, once magnificent, now stood broken and partially burned. Valdorian ships would occasionally pass overhead, sleek and silent compared to the clumsy shuttles humans had built before the invasion. "What are they looking for?" Frank asked. Kevin frowned at his screen. Not what. Who. They're tracking humans, with certain genetic markers. They've been taking people to that processing center we've been watching. The processing center had once been Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Now it was surrounded by Valdorian energy barriers, with their ships constantly coming and going. We need to see what's happening in there, Frank decided. That's the third group this week they've taken alive instead of killing on sight. Their small resistance cell had grown to 28 people. Most were civilians who had learned to fight when the alternative was death or capture. They operated from an old subway maintenance tunnel, venturing out only for supplies or to gather intelligence. As they made their way back to their hideout, they passed through the ruins of a shopping district. Frank stopped suddenly, raising his fist. Their signal to freeze. A Valdorian patrol moved on the street above them. Unlike the diplomatic emissary from the first contact, these Valdorians wore form-fitting armor that enhanced their already impressive height and strength. The group held perfectly still, barely breathing until the patrol passed. Once they were gone, Samantha spoke softly. Did you see how that one was taking samples? Plant life, soil, even scraping building materials. Frank nodded. They're studying everything about us. Our environment, our bodies, our technology. Back at their hideout, they found a commotion. One of their scouts, Nate Wilson, had returned with a survivor he'd found hiding in a department store basement. This is Eric Bradley, Nate explained. He worked at the hospital before they took it over. He escaped during the initial takeover. Eric was thin and pale, his hands shaking slightly as he accepted a cup of water from one of the resistance members. They're sorting us, Eric said, his voice barely above a whisper. Taking blood samples, tissue samples. They separate humans into groups based on some criteria I couldn't understand. What happens to the groups? Frank asked, though he dreaded the answer. Some are processed immediately, Eric said, looking down. Others are kept alive longer for experiments. The Valdorians, they consume them. Not just for food. They somehow absorb information, memories, knowledge. A horrified silence fell over the group. How did you escape? Kevin asked finally. There was confusion during the initial takeover. I hid in a supply closet, then the morgue. I've been hiding ever since, moving at night. Eric looked up, his eyes haunted. But that's not the worst part. I overheard two of them talking. They kept referring to Earth as the preserve, like we're animals in a wildlife park. They've been watching us for thousands of years, guiding our development. Frank's radio crackled to life. Few working communications remain since the Valdorians established signal jammers across major cities. This is Horizon Actual to any resistance forces. Authentication code Sierra 972. Respond if you can hear this transmission. Frank grabbed the radio. This is Sergeant Frank Miller, Chicago Resistance. Authentication code received. Who am I speaking with? Sergeant, this is Captain William Carter of the USI Horizon. We're operating from lunar orbit with the remaining fleet elements. We need ground intelligence. What's your situation? For the first time in months, Frank felt a spark of hope. The space fleet still existed. They weren't alone. Captain, Chicago is heavily occupied. The aliens have taken over the Northwestern Memorial Hospital as a processing center. They're capturing humans alive, conducting experiments. They refer to Earth as the preserve. They've apparently been watching us for thousands of years. There was a pause before Carter responded. That matches intelligence we've gathered from other resistance cells. The Valdorians see themselves as apex predators of the galaxy. They seed and cultivate worlds, then harvest them when they reach a certain level of development. Harvest? Frank asked, though he already knew the answer. They consume other species, physically and mentally. They somehow absorb knowledge, culture, even memories through the process. But here's the important part. According to Dr. Wright's analysis of their communications, they're encountering unexpected resistance on Earth. They're used to species that surrender once their major power centers fall. Samantha joined the conversation. They don't understand humans very well, do they? No, Carter agreed. And that's our advantage. Dr. Wright believes they've miscalculated fundamentally about Earth. Most worlds they've conquered had peaceful evolutionary paths, leading to cooperative but docile species. Earth's harsh evolutionary history created something they rarely encounter. "What's that?" Frank asked. "Competing predators," Carter replied. "We evolved not just to survive, but to dominate our environment. Every human instinct to fight when cornered, to protect our young, to form packs and hunt. It's all working against their expectations." Frank looked around at his ragtag group of fighters, ordinary people who had found their inner warriors when threatened. "What's the plan, Captain?" he asked. "We're coordinating with resistance cells worldwide. The lunar colony commander, Lisa Brooks, has established a secure base there. Mars colonies are building weapons. We need you to gather intelligence on that processing center. Find out what they're doing with the captives." "Understood," Frank replied. "But we'll need better weapons. Their armor repels most conventional bullets." "We're working on that," Carter said. "We've recovered some of their technology. There may be vulnerabilities we can exploit. Stay alive, Sergeant. This fight is just beginning." As the transmission ended, Frank looked at his people. They were tired, hungry, and outgunned. But in their eyes, he saw something the Valdorians clearly hadn't expected to find on Earth. The fierce determination of a predator species that refused to become prey. "They've been watching us for thousands of years," he told his team. "But they miss something important about humans. We don't surrender easily. And when cornered, we don't run. We fight." Kevin nodded grimly. "They thought they were farming sheep. Turns out, they were raising wolves." Dr. Patricia Hammond wiped sweat from her forehead as she bent over her workbench. The hidden laboratory in the Appalachian Mountains was well-equipped but hot and stuffy. 6 months had passed since the invasion began. 6 months of studying the enemy. The Valdorian tissue sample glowed faintly under her microscope. She had collected it during a raid on a smaller processing facility last month. The risk had been worth it. "I think I've found something," she said to her assistant, Paul Rogers. The young man looked up from his computer station. "What is it?" he asked, coming to stand beside her. "Their nervous system responds strangely to these electromagnetic frequencies." She pointed to her readings. "Look at how the tissue reacts. On the screen, the silvery alien cells pulsed and then contracted violently when exposed to a specific wavelength. It causes them pain," Paul realized. "Extreme pain, judging by these readings." Patricia nodded, a hint of grim satisfaction in her expression. "We can modify our weapons to target this vulnerability. A directed pulse at this frequency might cut through their armor like it isn't even there." She reached for her radio. This information needed to reach the resistance fighters immediately. In orbit around Earth's moon, Captain Carter studied the tactical display on the horizon's bridge. The surviving human fleet had gathered here, protected by the lunar defense. Systems that Commander Lisa Brooks had managed to keep operational. "Message from Dr. Hammond in the Appalachian base," Lieutenant Martinez reported. "She's discovered a weakness in Valdorian biology. Their nervous system is hypersensitive to specific electromagnetic frequencies." Carter felt the first real hope in months. "Send this to our weapons teams immediately. Have them start modifying whatever they can." He turned to Dr. Wright, who was analyzing Valdorian communication patterns on another screen. "How soon can we test this?" "We already have a target," Wright replied. "The processing facility in Chicago. Our intelligence suggests it's one of their largest operations." Carter nodded. "Contact Sergeant Miller's team. It's time for Operation Thunderstrike." On Earth, Frank Miller received the transmission with cautious optimism. His resistance fighters had grown stronger over the months, joining with other groups until they numbered over 100. They had established a network of hideouts throughout the ruined city. "They want us to hit the hospital?" Samantha asked, her medical training making her especially disturbed by what the aliens had done to the once healing place. "Not just hit it," Frank replied. "They're sending a strike team from orbit. Our job is to create a distraction and then help evacuate the prisoners they free." Kevin looked up from the modified weapons he was preparing. Dr. Hammond's specifications had arrived an hour ago, and he had been working frantically to adapt their gear. "These should work," he said, handing a modified rifle to Frank. It generates the frequency that disrupts their nervous system. Range is limited, maybe 50 yards, but it should cut through their armor. Frank checked the weapon. Everyone gets trained on these tonight. We move at dawn. The next morning, explosions rocked the southern perimeter of the Valdorian Processing Center. Frank's team had planted bombs at key points, drawing the alien guards away from the main entrance. Phase 1 complete, Frank reported into his radio. Their attention is diverted. From above, a small, sleek craft descended rapidly through the atmosphere. It was a USI Special Operations ship, designed for stealth and speed. Inside, Major Miller, recently promoted from sergeant for this mission, checked his team's readiness. Beside him sat Commander Brooks, who had insisted on joining the operation despite her usual orbital post. Approaching the drop point, the pilot announced. Minimal resistance detected. The diversion worked. Remember, Brooks told the strike team, our primary goal is to free the prisoners. Secondary goal is to gather intelligence on Valdorian operations. The ship landed on the hospital roof with barely a sound. The strike team moved quickly, using their modified weapons to devastating effect. The first Valdorian guard they encountered collapsed immediately when hit with the electromagnetic pulse, its silvery skin darkening as its nervous system overloaded. It works, one soldier whispered in awe. They moved efficiently through the building, freeing humans from holding cells and laboratory chambers. The scenes inside were horrific, people in various stages of what the Valdorians called processing. In one secure room, they found a man strapped to a table, surrounded by Valdorian medical equipment. Despite months of captivity, Miller recognized him immediately from news broadcasts before the invasion. Director Rivera, he said, quickly working to free the man. Jonathan Rivera, former head of the USI. The weakened man looked up with recognition dawning in his hollow eyes. You're human soldiers. Yes, sir, Miller replied. We're getting you out of here. As they helped Rivera to his feet, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Their presence had been discovered. Move to extraction point, Brooks ordered. We have 15 minutes before they overwhelm us. As they fought their way back toward the roof, Rivera spoke urgently to Brooks. The Valdorians. They have a hierarchy. Each invasion force is led by an alpha. It directs all operations. Where is this alpha? Brooks asked, firing her weapon at an approaching Valdorian guard. Orbital. Command ship, Rivera gasped. I saw it when they brought me in. They keep it cloaked most of the time. On another floor of the facility, Samantha Collins had separated from her group during the confusion. Finding herself in a research area, she quickly downloaded data from a Valdorian terminal using techniques Kevin had taught her. What she found shocked her. Images of other worlds, other species, all conquered by the Valdorians. But Earth was labeled differently in their files. Where other planets were marked with symbols that translated roughly to harvest or consumed, Earth had a warning symbol. The data showed Valdorian casualty rates on Earth were exponentially higher than in any previous conquest. Human resistance had cost them nearly 30% of their invasion force, unheard of in their thousands of years of expansion. A final notation caught her eye before she had to flee. Species exhibits unprecedented aggression when cornered. Caution advised. Potential threat to collective. They were afraid. The mighty Valdorians were actually afraid of what humans might become. Samantha rejoined her team just as they reached the extraction point. The freed prisoners, nearly 300 in total, were being loaded onto larger transport ships that had arrived as reinforcements. As they lifted off, Frank looked down at the facility. Valdorian reinforcements were arriving, but too late. For the first time, humans had dealt the invaders a significant defeat. Director Rivera, though weakened, insisted on speaking directly to Captain Carter once they reached the lunar base. The Valdorians aren't invincible, he told Carter as medical staff tended to his injuries. They're organized around a central authority figure. This alpha makes all strategic decisions. Without it, their forces would be disoriented, at least temporarily. Carter considered this information. Then we have our next target. On the other side of the room, Samantha shared her discovery with Dr. Wright. They're afraid of us, she concluded. No species has ever resisted them so effectively. Wright nodded thoughtfully. Because no species they've encountered evolved like we did. Earth's history forced us to become adaptable, resourceful. Dangerous, Samantha finished. They expected sheep but found wolves. More than wolves, Wright replied. They found equals. 1 year after the Valdorian invasion began, humanity had transformed from victims into fighters. The lunar base had become the center of human resistance, with Captain Carter, now Admiral Carter, coordinating worldwide operations. Operation Predator's Gambit, Carter announced to the assembled officers in the command center. The holographic display showed Earth and the positions of known Valdorian forces. While our ground forces launch coordinated attacks worldwide as a distraction, a small team will infiltrate the Valdorian command ship to eliminate the Alpha. The room fell silent. This was the most ambitious plan yet conceived. A direct strike at the heart of the enemy leadership. How do we even find their command ship? Asked Commander Brooks. It stays cloaked most of the time. Director Rivera, recovered from his ordeal and now serving as intelligence advisor, stepped forward. During my captivity, I observed their communication protocols. Their cloaking technology creates a specific energy signature, nearly invisible, but detectable, if you know what to look for. He gestured to the display, highlighting an area of empty space near Earth's orbit. Their command ship is here, I'm certain of it. And how do we get there? Major Miller asked. His experiences fighting on Earth's surface had earned him a place on this critical mission. With this, Carter said, changing the display to show a sleek silver craft. A captured Valdorian shuttle, modified by our engineers. Grace Peterson has learned to pilot it. Grace, formerly the communications specialist on the Horizon, nodded confidently. Their navigation systems are intuitive once you understand the basics. I can get us there. The strike team will consist of Major Miller, Lieutenant Martinez, Dr. Wright, and Director Rivera with Grace as pilot, Carter continued. Dr. Wright's knowledge of Valdorian biology and Rivera's familiarity with their ship layouts are essential. Once aboard, Rivera added, we'll need to reach the central command chamber. That's where the Alpha will be. Kevin Daniels, who had been working with the technical team, raised his hand. I've developed a virus that should disrupt their command network. If you can upload it to their main system, it will spread to all Valdorian ships connected to the network. Operation begins at Oro 600 tomorrow, Carter concluded. Earth forces are already being notified of their roles in the distraction phase. After the meeting, Miller found Martinez checking her modified weapon. The electromagnetic pulse technology had been refined over months of combat. Nervous? He asked. She glanced up. About infiltrating an alien command ship to assassinate their leader? Just another Tuesday. Despite her joke, her hands trembled slightly. We've come a long way, Miller said. A year ago, we were hiding in subway tunnels, and now we're taking the fight to them. Martinez holstered her weapon. They never expected this from us. At dawn, as Earth forces launched coordinated attacks on Valdorian positions worldwide, the captured shuttle lifted off from the lunar base. Grace's hands moved confidently over the alien controls, guiding the small craft toward the coordinates Rivera had provided. Approaching the target zone, she announced after an hour of tense flight. Activating Valdorian identification codes. The codes, extracted from captured Valdorian technology, would hopefully fool the command ship into thinking they were a returning patrol craft. There, Rivera said suddenly, pointing to what appeared to be empty space. Can you see the distortion? That's their cloaking field. As they watched, a massive ship gradually became visible as they approached, a great silver structure nearly a mile long, with the same flowing, shifting patterns they had seen on the first Valdorian diplomatic vessel. Identification codes accepted, Grace reported, tension clear in her voice. They're guiding us to a docking bay. Everyone remember the plan, Miller said. We move quickly, stick to less traveled corridors using Rivera's intel, reach the command center, eliminate the Alpha, and upload the virus. The shuttle slid into a vast docking bay filled with similar craft. Valdorian crew members moved about, their tall, silvery forms graceful despite their predatory nature. Ready? Miller asked. His team nodded, checking their weapons one last time. They exited the shuttle, moving with practiced precision. The first few corridors were clear, Rivera's knowledge of patrol patterns proving accurate. Then, rounding a corner, they encountered a group of 3 Valdorians. Martinez fired first, her weapon emitting a silent pulse that dropped the closest alien immediately. Wright and Miller targeted the others before they could sound an alarm. That was too close, Wright whispered. They'll discover these bodies soon. Then we move faster, Miller ordered. They progressed deeper into the ship, encountering resistance that grew increasingly fierce. The Valdorians realized intruders had penetrated their command vessel. Alarm signals flashed along the corridor, walls, patterns of light that Rivera translated as maximum alert. Miller took a hit to his left arm, the Valdorian weapon burning through his protective gear. Despite the injury, he continued fighting, showing a pain tolerance that visibly unsettled their opponents. They don't understand, Wright observed during a brief respite. In their previous conquests, most species surrendered when defeat seemed inevitable. Our continued resistance confuses them. After fighting through several more checkpoints, they reached the central section of the ship. Rivera pointed to a massive door ahead. The command center, he said. The Alpha will be inside. Using captured access codes, they breached the final door. Inside was a vast chamber with viewing portals showing Earth below. At its center stood a Valdorian unlike any they had seen before. Larger, its silver skin darker with age, patterns flowing across its surface with hypnotic complexity. The Alpha, Rivera whispered. The ancient Valdorian turned to face them, seemingly unsurprised by their presence. Humans, it spoke, its voice deeper and more resonant than other Valdorians. You have fought well to reach this place. Miller raised his weapon, but the Alpha made no move to defend itself. In thousands of years of conquest, the Alpha continued, we have never encountered a species that continued fighting after defeat was certain. Your kind is different. We're not like the others you've harvested, Miller replied. No, you are not prey who learn to use tools. You are predators who never forgot your nature. The Alpha's skin flickered with patterns that suggested something, like respect. Perhaps we have misjudged your place in the natural order. You invaded our world, killed our people, experimented on us, Martinez said, her weapon steady. Yes, as we have done on countless worlds before. It is our nature to consume, to absorb. The Alpha's pattern shifted again. But perhaps there is another path. Your species could serve the collective as warriors, hunters. You could be the military arm of our empire. In exchange, Earth would remain free. Miller looked at his team, then back at the alien leader. Earth doesn't create servants, he said firmly. It nurtures predators. He fired his weapon. The Alpha's ancient form convulsed as the electromagnetic pulse disrupted its nervous system. As it fell, Wright rushed to a control terminal, uploading Kevin's virus. It's done, Wright announced as information flowed through the Valdorian network. The virus is spreading to all their connected ships. Throughout Earth orbit, Valdorian vessels suddenly lost coordination. On the planet below, their ground forces found themselves without direction, vulnerable to the human counterattack. The strike team fought their way back to their shuttle, the ship's crew in disarray without the Alpha's guidance. As they escaped, they sent a simple message to Admiral Carter: Predator's gambit successful. The Alpha is eliminated. For the first time in a year, humanity had seized the initiative in the war for Earth. 3 months after the death of the Alpha, Earth had changed dramatically. Most of the planet had been liberated from Valdorian control. The remaining alien forces, cut off from Central Command, fought with decreasing effectiveness. Humanity pushed forward relentlessly, reclaiming city after city. Admiral Carter stood at the viewport of the newly established Earth Defense Command Center in what had once been Geneva. The city showed scars of battle, but was healing, much like the planet itself. People moved through the streets below, rebuilding their world. Admiral, a voice called from behind him, He turned to see Dr. Hammond and Dr. Wright entering the conference room. The analysis of Valdorian technology is complete. Carter nodded. The two scientists had been working tirelessly to understand the alien tech captured during the liberation. "What have you found?" he asked. Dr. Hammond set a data tablet on the table. "Their faster-than-light drive system. We can replicate it. Our engineers have already begun constructing prototype ships." "How soon?" Carter asked, hope rising in his voice. 6 months for the first vessel," Dr. Wright replied. "We're calling it the USI Defiance. It will be capable of traveling to nearby star systems." Carter felt a moment of pride. Humanity had not merely survived, they had grown stronger. "And the Valdorian biology research?" "That's even more interesting," Dr. Hammond said. "We've found evidence in their genetic structure that the Valdorians themselves were once prey species." "What?" Carter was genuinely surprised. Dr. Wright nodded. "Their evolutionary path shows signs of rapid adaptation under extreme pressure, similar to humans. But they took a different path. Where we developed cooperation alongside our predatory instincts, they focused solely on domination. They became the ultimate predators," Carter mused, "but lost something essential along the way." "Compassion," Dr. Hammond suggested. "The ability to see other species as more than just resources to be consumed." Their discussion was interrupted by an urgent call. "Admiral, we've detected a signal from the retreating Valdorian ships. They've transmitted something into deep space." Carter's expression darkened, a warning to their empire. In Chicago, now largely rebuilt, Frank Miller, promoted to colonel, watched new recruits training with adapted Valdorian weapons. The city had become a center for the Earth Defense Force, preparing for what might come next. Samantha Collins, now head of the medical division, joined him on the observation deck. "They're learning quickly," she observed. "They have to," Frank replied. "The signal the Valdorians sent, we need to be ready when their reinforcements arrive." Samantha looked troubled. "Do you think we can stand against their entire empire? We barely survived one invasion force." Frank turned to her with unexpected optimism. "We're not the same people they attacked a year ago. We've adapted, we've learned, and most importantly, we're united in a way humanity has never been before." Across the globe, this unity was evident. Former nations now worked together under the Earth Defense Alliance. Captured Valdorian technology accelerated human advancement by decades. Space stations were being constructed in Earth orbit, and the lunar and Martian colonies had expanded significantly. At a research facility in what had once been the Valdorian command ship, Kevin Daniels led a team studying alien communication systems. They had made a shocking discovery. "There are other species fighting the Valdorians," he reported to Admiral Carter during a secure transmission. "We've decoded messages referring to resistance movements on worlds previously thought conquered." "Can we contact them?" Carter asked. "Not yet," Kevin admitted. "But with the FTL technology, we could reach them directly." This information changed everything. Humanity was not alone in its struggle against the Valdorian collective. There were potential allies among the stars. In a ceremony 6 months later, Admiral Carter stood before the assembled crew of the USI Defiance. The ship represented humanity's first true interstellar vessel, built with a combination of human ingenuity and Valdorian technology. "Today marks a new chapter in human history," Carter addressed the crew and the billions watching the broadcast worldwide. "For centuries we looked to the stars with wonder and hope. When the Valdorians came, they hoped to find easy prey. Instead, they found Earth doesn't create prey. It nurtures predators." The assembled crew nodded solemnly. "But we've learned something important," Carter continued. "Being predators doesn't mean we must be like the Valdorians, consuming and destroying. We can be something more. We can be protectors." He gestured to a star map displaying nearby systems. "Our mission is twofold. First, to establish an early warning network to detect any approaching Valdorian forces. Second, to seek out other species who have suffered under Valdorian rule, not to conquer them as the Valdorians would, but to offer alliance, to help them fight back." Dr. Wright, now serving as the ship's chief science officer, stepped forward. We've identified several systems with evidence of advanced civilizations that may have been targeted by the Valdorians. Some may still be fighting as we did. The Defiance leaves tomorrow, Carter announced, and it won't be alone for long. 5 more ships are under construction. Within a year, Earth will have a fleet capable of defending not just our world, but potentially others. After the ceremony, Carter spoke privately with the ship's captain, Lisa Brooks, formerly commander of the lunar colony. "You understand what's at stake," he said. It wasn't a question, she nodded. "The Valdorians will return with greater numbers. We need allies. And we need to show those allies that not all advanced species are like the Valdorians," Carter added. "That advancement doesn't have to mean predation without compassion." Across the solar system, humanity prepared. The painful lessons of the invasion had taught them to be vigilant, to be strong, but not to lose what made them human in the process. On the edge of a distant star system, a primitive civilization looked up at their skies in terror as Valdorian ships appeared. The aliens had culled this region before and returned periodically to harvest more of the indigenous population. The locals had no defenses against such advanced predators, but this time, something unexpected happened. As the Valdorian ships began their approach, new vessels appeared, human ships led by the Defiance. They positioned themselves between the Valdorians and the vulnerable planet. "This ends today," Captain Brooks transmitted to the Valdorian vessels. "This world is under our protection now." The Valdorians, encountering the species that had defeated their invasion force, hesitated. They had never faced a prey species that had not only fought back, but had followed them into space. As the human fleet engaged the Valdorian ships, the natives watched in awe. For the first time in their history, someone had come not to take, but to protect. On the bridge of the Defiance, Dr. Wright observed the primitive civilization on the view screen. "They're watching us," he said quietly. "This moment will change their history forever." "Just as the Valdorians changed ours," Brooks replied. "But we're offering a different lesson." The final Valdorian ship retreated, outmatched by the human vessels. On the planet below, the natives emerged from hiding, gazing upward at their unexpected saviors. "Earth doesn't just nurture predators," Brooks said as she ordered relief supplies prepared for the planet below. "It nurtures protectors."